well, as an active teacher, it must be troubling for you to hear that the retired teachers have formed these Facebook groups because they are convinced that you are mismanaging the money and they aren't getting a pension and cost of, I'm sorry, do you need to do something?
Look at that camera, we just started the record, so.
You did start to record?
Yeah, just started the record for this camera, the COVID camera.
Okay, I got to start that over again, sorry.
I'm sorry that you started it.
Okay. I'll start again. As an active teacher, you must be concerned that so many retirees are convinced that the retirement system is being mismanaged. What do you want to say to them?
Well, I think what I would tell them, not just our retired teachers, but also our active teachers, is that there's a good story to tell from STRS. Our funding ratio has improved greatly. Our risk to our fund has gone down. So some of these changes, we had pension reform in 2012 and 2017 that were needed because our fund was in jeopardy. So the boards at those times made some changes. And I would say to them right now that those changes were effective. They accomplished what they wanted to do. They have put our fund up at a funding ratio of about 87%. And our risk has greatly fallen. And that's given the board the opportunity right now, where over the last 8 months, we've been talking about reinstating a COLA for our members and also helping our active teachers by taking away the age 60 requirement. So the pension reforms were difficult, but effective. And our board has done, and our board and our staff has done a great job at improving the solidity and stability of our fund. So I think we're in a good place.
Are you planning to give them a cost of living increase every year as they've been promised?
Well, right now, the cost of living if we were going to introduce a COLA, that would be a new COLA every year, adds about $13 billion to the fund in liability, which our actuaries would not sign off. The board doesn't have sole discretion on to reinstate a COLA. We need our actuaries to tell us that it doesn't financially impair the system. What we are looking at doing right now is doing a one-time COLA, which they would get forever, but that lowers that liability from $13 billion down to $1 billion.
At the time they retired, they were all promised annual cost of living increases. What happened to this fund that you aren't able to live up to the pledge?
Well, I would say there was a lot of things that were responsible for that board in 2017 who made that decision to suspend the COLA. I didn't join the board till 2018, right afterwards. But there's been the markets in 2008, that crash had a huge effect on the fund. And there was legislation that said we had to have a funding ratio above a certain level. And after that stock market crash, we were below that, and there had to be changes made to the system in order to make sure that our pension is there, not just for our retirees, not just for our current teachers, but those people who are still in college who are just going to become teachers.
For the last 10 years, though, the market has been on fire. It's been doing very well. Your fund has underperformed, and critics say it's because you took a large percentage of the teachers' retirement funds and put them into risky investments, hedge funds and equity funds that are not managed well and are not subject to federal scrutiny. How much of the fund have you put into these private equity and hedge funds?
I think just off the top of my head, hedge funds are less than 1% of our entire portfolio. But I would like to circle back and about to the issue that we have underperformed, because over the last 10 years, when you look at STRS investment returns compared to our public peer pension funds, we outperform 90% of the public pension funds in the country. We are one of the top performing public pension funds. So I'm not sure which critics are saying we have underperformed, but I don't believe that's an accurate description.
But if you were performing so well, why didn't they get their cost of living increases?
Well, we have performed so well. And I think what the changes that we need to make sure our members understand is we were at about a 54% funding ratio not that long ago, and that has improved to 87%. There was, in 5 years ago, our fund was at a 48% risk of falling below a 50% funding threshold. That 48% risk has been reduced to 16%. That's why those changes were made. Those numbers have improved so much that last June, the former board chair, Rita Walters, directed our staff to find out what can we do for COLA protection for our retirees, what can we do for our members, and that's been an ongoing discussion for the last 8 months. And I think as soon as March that we're going to be able to vote on enhancing some benefits for our membership, both active and retired teachers.
You know, one of the things that the retirees have been very concerned about is the bonuses and cost of living increases that went to the staff. And the fact that a large percentage of your employees are making six-figure incomes, and yet they were denied cost of living increases while your staff was rolling in cost of living increases and bonuses. Shouldn't they be angry about that?
I don't believe so. And I think you have to look at the total picture when you have that kind of conversation. Our investment staff is composed of incredible, hardworking, dedicated professionals. And we at STRS do a compensation study every 2 years to make sure that they are paid adequately for their service. And we use what's called a performance incentive plan, which is very common in the investment industry to compensate our employees. And what I would say is, first of all, only about less than 20% of the employees at STRS are eligible for a PBI, according to that plan. That plan cost us about $7 million last year. But the way we internally invest our assets saved Ohio's teachers $117 million. And we get that savings every year because we decide to pay our investment managers and do it internally, as opposed to sending those assets to Wall Street and having them do it. So I think we've received a lot more savings than that PBI plan has cost us.
But don't you spend a lot of money? Don't you pay fees to Wall Street? Investors outside,
which is far greater than most of our pension peers. And our costs, when we compare them to our public pension peers, are consistently less than what others
the teachers are
paying for the same
saying that they
investments.
can't verify these claims of yours because you aren't transparent. And during the forensic audit, for example, you refuse to release some of these financial documents that you say show that your fund is flourishing. Why have you not been more transparent?
Well, first, I'd like to take issue with their claim that they did a forensic audit. Even if you read the BFS report that came out, one of the disclaimers they make right at the beginning is this is not a forensic audit. And I will say on the issue of transparency, STRS released over 800 documents, which was over 22,000 pages worth of documents to the BFS to write that report. And if anybody who's been involved in public service, like I am a public school teacher, when we get public records requests, we need to make sure that they're narrow enough in scope that we can provide the documents in an efficient manner. STRS sent BFS, I believe, 24 emails seeking clarification on their very overly broad public records requests. And BFS didn't respond to any of those emails. So to say that we weren't transparent, I don't believe really tells the whole picture.
You have two board members who have considerable economic experience. Dr. Rickenbaum, who's an economics professor, and Wade Steen, who's an auditor. Both of them uphold the findings of this forensic audit. So you have two board members who are questioning the financial management and the lack of transparency. They claim they can't get reports that they want. They couldn't get the information that they wanted from you on things like bonuses and investments. Shouldn't the teachers be concerned if two of the board members, the two board members who have economic experience, say there's a problem here?
Well, what I will say is that we have a very strong board that's made up of 11 members. And I will say the majority of us are educators, and we're absolutely looking out for what's best for our fellow teachers. And while we don't always agree on a course of action, the majority of our board speaks with one voice and is in support of STRS Ohio. Now, these two board members in question, I know our former board chair and myself wrote them and asked them for what information they could not get from our staff. And that email went unanswered. And I would also like to point out that these two board members are the same two board members that in December proposed a partnership with two guys that basically had no clients, no money under management, and no track record. And that those clients wanted to get about control of $65 billion worth of assets for Ohio's teachers. And our board, the rest of the board recognized that and said, this is not something we can do. Our investment staff advised the board it's not something we should do. And our independent consultants advised us that it's not something we can do.
As you sit here, knowing that these two groups are calling for new leadership, they want to get rid of the current CEO, they want to elect new board members who they think will better protect their assets and their futures. How does that make you feel as an active teacher yourself? You're being accused of mismanaging this fund and not protecting teachers.
It's disappointing because I think there's an excellent story to be told at STRS right now. I think the way our fund has improved, in particular over the last 4 years since I've been on the board, I think we're in a place where many of us didn't think we would get to for a very long time. Not only are we looking at reinstating a COLA, we're looking at dropping the age 60 requirement for retirement, which was going to go into effect in 2026. But we're also on track to become 100% funded within less than 10 years. And there's many people who thought we would never reach 100% funded. So I think there's a very good story to be told. And I like opportunities like this where I can talk with you and I can share that story.
There is supposedly a state audit underway, but you haven't been audited as is required by law every 10 years. It's been now, I think, 16 or 17 years. Why haven't you been subjected to the state audit that by law you are required to undergo?
Well, that's a great question, but that audit is authorized by the Ohio Retirement Service Council, and that's up to them to authorize that. So they would really only be the ones to answer that question directly. But what I would say is that SRS submits quarterly reports to the ORSC every year. And just because that audit hadn't taken place from them, we've had our own internal audits, we've had our own consultants audit us, and we submit those reports quarterly to ORSC. So there has been a ton of oversight and a lot of people looking at things to make sure we do things right at STRS.
The teachers have had to pay more into the retirement system over the years. In fact, they pay quite a bit more than someone, say, on Social Security would pay. But there has not been an increase in fees to the education systems, to the school districts in more than 38 years. Why haven't they had to pay more?
I would question the 38-year number because I know when I first started teaching, which has been less than that, but the schools were responsible for 10%. And I don't have the exact years in front of me, but their 10% contribution rate went up to 14% as well. So there was an increase in what the schools had to pay.
There's a lot of division now in your membership and your board. You've got a lot of unhappy people. The fact that so many people think that you have mismanaged the fund has to be troubling to you. So how do you get this message out to them? And why is there this disconnect?
Well, I think obviously the COLA issue is very personal to a lot of retired members and they want that now. Unfortunately, as a board chair, as a board member, our greatest concern is the sustainability of our fund and making sure that it's there for future generations, not just the current generation. What's most important is that we get that monthly benefit check when we retire and that it's there for future teachers. And sometimes when, things like in 2008 happened, the board had to make some difficult decisions. But again, I would emphasize that the board and the staff have done a remarkable job of turning things around. And we are now in a position to start looking at enhancing benefits, which is a great place to be.
Great. I noticed a couple of times you've been reading from some notes. Did someone prepare comments for you?
No, but I don't speak very often to the public. I'm a secondary math teacher. So I do like to be prepared when I go into something. So of course I know what some of our public criticism is. So I tried to prepare a little bit just for my own person, to make sure I address some key topics.
All right, before I let you go, is there any message you want to give to these angry retirees who are really resentful of the way the system's been managed?
Yeah, I would like to say that I have the utmost respect and confidence in our staff at STRS. I have the utmost respect and confidence in our current board, and I believe their heart's in the right place, and they are looking for the long-term sustainability of our fund. I would also like to say that we've been successful in getting to a place where we can start to restore some benefits to our membership. And you know, the future looks bright. We're looking at getting to be 100% funded very soon, and that's going to create new opportunities that we can pass on to our members.
You can see, though, that the optics of this aren't very good when your entire staff got cost of living increases and the teachers did not.
Well, I think the consequences of not paying our staff according to the compensation study that we do would be a lot more detrimental. I think we would lose a lot of our associates, and I think we might lose the ability to do our internal investing, which we do. And I think that's a key component to how we save money for Ohio's teachers. I know, like I mentioned before, that's $117 million we save by doing things in-house. So,
but teachers would say the consequences of not giving them a cost of living increase are pretty dire too.
well, I think the consequences could be far worse than just themselves, because I think that would hurt the returns that we have. We had a 29% return last year. It was above our benchmark and above our peers. Our staff did an excellent job. If we would lose that staff, I think that number would be impacted greatly.
All right. Well, thank you for your time.